Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another live stream here from Empty Cloud Monastery. Today, we're very happy to have with us a guest, Khenmo Drolma, so one of the senior bhikshunis from the Drikung Tara tradition. So it's been quite a while since we've had a guest teaching from Khenmo Drolma, so we're very happy that she had time to join us today. So I'll go ahead and pass things over to Khenmo Drolma and let her present the Dhamma in the way that she sees fit. So please give her your full attention.
It's lovely to join you again. It's been since before you moved. So I'm so happy to see even the little bit of screen of Empty Cloud Monastery in New Jersey. So traditionally we begin with an aspiration prayer. It's one you're familiar with. I'm sure we call it the four Immeasurables. I think you call it the four Brahma Viharas. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be free from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So I'm really thrilled to introduce you tonight to the special Tara practice for epidemics. When I was first scheduling this teaching, I was thinking, well, things are winding down, but now we have a whole new wave of things. And of course, somewhere in the world, there is an epidemic and great suffering. So it's always appropriate. I want to begin with some images of green Tara and to talk a little bit about Tara and the significance of this particular practice. So when the epidemic first started, His Holiness Drikung Rinpoche, who is the head of the Drikung lineage, searched through all of the old records to find practices that were particularly, were the particular medicine that was needed for this time. So he went way back into the teachings of our founder, Lord Jigten Sumgun, and found a very special Tara practice. So Lord Jigten Sumgun lived in the 1100s, and I'll talk a little more about him, but he had a particular affinity with green Tara. And in the Tibetan tradition, we like to think of Tara primarily as green Tara or white Tara, but actually there are 21 Taras. And the 20th of the 21 Taras is Lama Jonma, or in her wrathful form, Parnashavari. That is a specific activity of Tara, which is the fear of disease, of untimely death, and particularly epidemics. So Tara is known throughout the world in many different forms. So you may have heard of Kuan Yin, she who hears the cries of the world. You may have heard of Kannon in Japan, or Tara or Drolma in the Tibetan tradition. And I think when we try to envision compassion, the idea of a feminine figure, a mother figure, who has this boundless quality of love for each and every being as though they were a beloved child. And in particular, Tara is the activity of compassion. So on the left side, you see her foot coming off the cushion and she's ready to spring into action. So she's known as compassionate activity and she who removes all fears, and in the form of white Tara, long life. And you may see pictures of Kannon, who's holding the vase of long life and pouring out the long life to her beloved children. But this Tara is very interesting. And if you look at the right side, when we're depicting this Tara, instead of wearing the royal robes, she's wearing leaves. And you can see that she's holding in one of her hands a bundle of leaves. So this Tara has the knowledge of the woods, the knowledge of the plants, and she's dressed in the medicine that she carries. So she's coming in that swift activity with medicine. Now, it's always interesting when we're talking about healing and things of that nature. In the Tibetan tradition, it's very clear healing is a state of mind. So healing is ultimately connecting to the realization as a direct experience, the realization of the Buddha. And sometimes the body gets better and sometimes it doesn't. So it's clear that it may result in physical healing, but the nature of healing is that realization of wisdom inseparable from the boundless love and compassion, the boundless joy and equanimity in the first prayer. So in the 1100s, when Lord Jigten Sumgön lived, the major epidemic that was incurable at that time was leprosy. And he became known as the Lama who dreamt away leprosy. His teachings were so profound, his realization was so profound that many lepers flocked to him, and they flocked to him because he had leprosy himself. So after he had been training with all of the great teachers of his time, after he was their most realized student, he went into deep retreat. And in our tradition, we go into caves and we stay in caves for years until we have the final realization or the significant realization of non-duality. So he was in his cave and somehow he contracted leprosy, and it was not only considered incurable. If a teacher were to get leprosy at that time, not so different from now, you would be blamed that there'd be some great sin in your life or past life that was creating the karma for the leprosy to arise. And so it's said in the text that, he went into town and no one would help him. He was out of food and he was knocking on doors and no one would even open their door to him. Certainly fear of the leprosy, but also great disappointment in him for having that horrible karma. Finally, someone gave him a little something and he went back to his retreat cave. And it said that he was so sick that he couldn't even lift his head to have a drink of water. So he thought it was his time of death, and he went into practice. And when he went into practice, his heart opened with extraordinary compassion to all of the suffering beings throughout time and space. And he had set up an altar with Chenrezig, who is the great figure of compassion in the Tibetan tradition. And that statue fell over, and in one moment, he broke through to full realization. And he said that he was hesitant to say that this final realization came in the course of one evening. And he said, it took days. But it was in that moment. And he said that he could look out from the mouth of his cave and he could see like a great Naga snake leaving the valley, and that it just poured out of him and walked away, walked down. And then he had a vision of Tara. And so his teaching became extraordinary, and the lepers flocked to him, and many, many, many lepers were cured. And that's why he is known as the Lama who dreams away leprosy, but particularly from his Bodhichitta practice and kindness practice, that it was this welling of compassion that helped him make that final crossover to realization. And so he left 150 books, but then there was a small set of what is called his heart's advice. And there is a simple 9-line teaching on Tara that is in that very special text of his heart's advice. So just backtracking a little bit and understanding how in the Tibetan system we understand deity practice and how we understand the meaning of what we're doing. This photo was actually taken from Vulture Peaks Mountain, the beginning of Mahayana, where Khenchen Konchel Gyaltsen was giving a talk on the Heart Sutra. So as the philosophical tradition of Buddhism traveled and evolved over time, there came a period where there was a strong emphasis on compassion and an exploration of really what we mean by this realization that the Buddha had. So in the Tibetan tradition, we understand that this non-dual, peace, uncompounded, boundaryless, limitless, extraordinary non-dual realization that the Buddha had is a complete absence of ignorance. So everything that has the quality of I and other, of any dualistic conceptual thought, is not present. But we don't understand that realization to be a void. We understand that realization then to have the qualities of love and compassion mixed with emptiness of this vast, all-pervading Dharmakaya presence. And so when the Tibetans were understanding their exploration of Buddha qualities, they imagined figures as, in some ways, as a teaching tool, and in some ways of giving presence to an illiterate society what the qualities of Buddha nature are, and also understanding and depicting visually that this Dharmakaya of realization is not inactive, that it has an active quality or an active compassion like green Tara. So you see in the center picture light going through a prism. So you may find it interesting or unusual that the Tibetan tradition is absolutely non-theistic and has hundreds of thousands of different deities. It's because we're imagining the activities of the Dharmakaya realization and then using them as a practice path to enter into that realization in a society that had very few books. And so the depictions of the different figures are meant to be a visual philosophy. So on the left, you see Prajnaparamita, and on the right, you see one of my favorite emanations of Tara, Achi, who is the special guardian of the Drikung lineage. So there is absolutely the understanding that there is a dynamic quality to the realization, and that there is a practice path of understanding or working with the qualities as depicted. And then over time, many great practitioners would have in the course of their practice, a visualization or a dream, or see directly a deity appearing to them, and then they would leave that practice path for their students. And Lord Jigten Sumgun left this very delightful Tara for times of epidemics. So here are some of the mother figures that you may recognize across time, to think how universal that is. So we have Mary from the Christian tradition, Kuan Yin, Tara as Tara went through Asia, became Kuan Yin, became Kenan. And on the right is a beautiful crystal depiction that's in between Kuan Yin and Tara. In between Kuan Yin and Mary. You can see the figure, and in front of her is the globe of the world. So it's familiar to both Christian and Buddhist, this combination. So this is the meditation itself. And what I'd like to do is read it through once with you, explain the stages of the meditation, and then we'll go through the meditation once tonight to become familiar with it. And then next week, I'll go into more depth about how it unfolds as a practice path. But first, it's good to just begin to become familiar. And so it is essentially a bodhicitta practice. Let's read it together first. At times of great epidemic disease, at daybreak, early in the morning, give rise to bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is love and compassion, and visualize yourself as the Yidam deity. The Yidam deity is your perfected realization in a way that you might identify with it. You could think of it as the historical Buddha. You can think of it as Tara. It's a way of imagining physically the enlightened state, as we also work with imagining the mental state in terms of its extraordinary openness and fearlessness. So we're visualizing ourselves already there so that we can begin to taste this great open-hearted quality. Then at the center of your heart, visualize the form of the Bhagavati Jetsantara, the protectress from the fear of disease, in bluish green color, the size of your hand. So you see the figure of Tara to the left, and you just visualize it in your heart, or you can visualize the word Tara in green letters, or you could visualize any one part of the visualization. So don't get hung up on trying to create an exact picture. Just say over time, you'll be able to imagine a small little figure the size of your hand in your heart. It helps, I think, to recall your childhood and how easy it is. Like, I can still visualize Mickey Mouse pretty clearly. So over time, you will find a connection to starting to see Tara in your heart. And the color is important as well. Blue-green, particularly from the shade you see of turquoise to the dark blue, is considered the color that's associated with healing poisons. So for instance, a peacock will eat poisonous seeds, and then that produces the beautiful feathers that contains this beautiful bluish green color. And green is also the color associated with the element of wind. So if we think of the activity of compassion and the pervasiveness of Tara's activity, seeing all sentient beings as beloved children. We have the quality of wind and the color associated with that element. From her body, green light rays emanate like mist, filling your heart and the inside of your body. So we're sitting there visualizing ourselves, our heart and mind as Tara, open, connecting to the suffering of all sentient beings, hearing the cries, and having that presence of fearlessness in the face of suffering and love in the face of suffering. And we see a green mist, that mist of that state of mind of bodhicitta filling our heart mind. So it's filling our body, inseparable from our mind. And we stay with that until it naturally starts to overflow. The light then emerges from your mouth, nose, and pores and pervades the boundless palace and all the regions you have in mind. So because we are not our ordinary selves with our judgments and who's deserving of love and who isn't, who's deserving of healing energy and who isn't, all that is gone, and there's just a fearless openness. And so as Tara, we're sitting in Tara's pure land in her palace. So as that light begins to pervade, it's a way of saying you're home. It pervades the boundless palace and all the regions you have in mind. So you can think of it as pervading your home, your workspace, your neighborhood, and then wherever you're just spontaneously hearing the cries of suffering, spontaneously the green healing light is going there. We actually worked with this twice a week through the whole epidemic. So there were times when we were thinking of New York as all of the, the crisis of all of the bodies piling up outside the hospitals. We were thinking of this, of the Western states when the wildfires were going on and all the animals so confused, caught up in fires, as the epidemic manifested worldwide, each person had their heart opening spontaneously and was imagining in different way the cries and immediately seeing the green healing light of Tara going to the hearts and minds of all beings, however we imagine them. So that is gorgeous. But if you can remember back to the beginning of the epidemic, and if now it's sort of in our mind stream once again, the fearfulness that we had when we didn't know how the epidemic was spreading and how we were catching it, and we'd have to go to the grocery store, or we'd have to go to the mailbox, that extraordinary fear of others that arose. The third part of this meditation is to imagine a form of Tara in front of each nostril. So essentially we were constructing our spiritual face mask. So as we were breathing out through Tara. As we were breathing in, we were breathing in through Tara, into the Tara in our hearts. And this is in some ways a way of holding on to that open, fearless mental space that we encounter when we're doing the first part of the meditation. And at another level, it is a way of seeing in the realization there is no dualistic separation between self and other. And so it's looking at the fear we have and slowly dissolving that boundary and slowly dissolving that fear. So these are the stages of the meditation, and I'd like to now invite you to work with the meditation. And first, just relax. It's really quite a simple meditation, and it's a way to touch base with your open heart. And we want to see when the fear arises. We want to see how self and other arises and how we freeze that. So it's a very soft way of working with that. And it's an extraordinary way of working with compassion in the face of greater and greater degrees of suffering. So we're opening not only our eyes, but our hearts and mind to the suffering of the world. We're choosing not to shut down, choosing not to slide into overwhelm, but rather creating a field of loving kindness and compassion and holding that field so that all sentient beings have a light in the darkness. So I will ring a bell. We'll have time to explore each stage. You might want to start tonight with just a simple, maybe Tara, the word written in green, and the green light pervading your body and seeing your body returning to its health and vitality, seeing your mind becoming less and less fearful. You can take it to whatever degree that you're comfortable. If you've had training in loving kindness and compassion, you can really go deeper into the warmth of that joyous receptivity and quality of wishing the best for each and every sentient being as though they were your beloved. Just realizing that all of these trainings are lifelong trainings, and we work with them slowly and gently at our own rate of speed. So we'll take it a little simply tonight and get used to the meditation, and then come back next week and explore ever deepening levels. So settling in, straightening your back, holding the shamatha meditation posture. We're giving rise to the qualities of bodhicitta, loving kindness and compassion. We're visualizing ourselves inseparable from Tara, with a Tara at the center of your heart. So with that soft feeling of just totally open, totally receptive, and totally loving, her green healing light begins to pervade every cell and also pervades any mental confusion as well. And we just let ourselves fill up. So let's sit with that. Then, without any sense of depletion, like there's a fountain that's just continuously pouring more and more green light into you, the light then emerges from your mouth, nose, and pores. And without even thinking, spontaneously, where are you hearing the cries of suffering, and allow that green light to immediately be present. So, however you imagine it, however you hear it, there's no right or wrong with this part. You allow your Tara heart mind to overflow from its fullness. And now imagining a small Tara in front of each of your nostrils, or even the word Tara in front of your nostrils. Just testing your own boundaries. It's a preparation for arising from the cushion, of holding on to this visualization as we move through the day. Just practice breathing out through Tara, breathing in through the Taras, into the Tara, into your heart. The armor of Bodhichitta. There may be times when it has to be a very thick and heavy cloth. There may be times when it can be more like the tissue of the paper mass. And there may be times where it's completely permeable. So at home, with outer circumstances being her mantra, everything you hear, all the beings inseparable from Tara, and inseparable from the Tara in your heart. But play with that, breathing out, breathing in, really understanding what that fear of other is, and allowing yourself to become relaxed. And in that relaxation, the softening of the barrier and armor. It is said that by the blessings of this visualization, one will not be affected by epidemic disease. This is my heart advice of profound protection. So, remembering not being affected by epidemic disease is not having our realization affected by epidemic disease, so that our hearts don't slam shut in fear when we see other people. That openness and that growing capacity to hold all the suffering with loving kindness and compassion, extending it to vast and vaster numbers of people, being, we would say, Vajra-like, immovable, unchangeable in holding that realization of love, compassion, and non-duality. So I'd like to see what questions there are now, so that you feel able to work with this visualization and Tara prayer on your own, or questions about the qualities of Vajrayana meditation, this style of meditation, and how you might connect with it. So, I'm not sure how I received the questions.
So if anyone has questions, you can go ahead and type them in the comments section, and I'll read them out for Khenmo to answer. I don't see any questions currently, but we can wait a moment and see if anybody puts one in. Or it might be that nobody has questions this evening.
Well, probably visualization is a little bit new for folks. Just think about some of the experiences that you've had. For instance, I was, we all have our COVID bubbles. So I was having tea with my neighbor, and she had a friend who comes and helps her. And I know that that friend also has a job in a nursing home. So I could feel fear arising. And, this, all of a sudden we have so many different kinds of fears, just even being in a room with other people. So really, seeing how maintaining this continual awareness of breathing in through Tara, exhaling through Tara, and not slamming the door of our hearts shut, not letting fear disconnect with that warmth that can be an deeply felt interconnection. So a lot of times people wonder about the efficacy of prayers like this. And I think we all have experiences, like if you're in your home and the person you're sharing your home with is really angry with you. Who doesn't feel that? We have expressions like dagger eyes and things like that. So in the same way, that open, warm, loving heart is something that's pervades everywhere we are and all the people that we're sharing our life with, even strangers in the supermarket.
Okay, well, there's still no questions showing up, so maybe we're moving towards the end of our session this evening. Khenmo, do you have any final comments before we wrap up?
Sure, I'd like to share our favorite dedication. As you remember, bodhicitta is a word that encompasses loving kindness and compassion, and ultimate bodhicitta is pervaded by emptiness with loving kindness and compassion. So no self, no other. So the prayer is, bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. So hold on to this very simple meditation. You can bring questions to next week as well. And I'm curious to see how you're experiencing it in the time in between our practice.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Khenmo, for offering this teaching and this meditation to all of us. We'll have the part 2 of this next week at the same time, so please come and join in again for the second part of this. And also continue joining in with all of our regular live streams happening actually almost every day of the week. So there's always something good happening to join in with. And of course, you're always welcome to come and visit the monastery when it works for you. Just send us an email for more information on that. So for now, we can end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we'll see you next time.
It is lovely to see you again.
You as well. So I'll end the broadcast at this time.